The emergency team arrived before dawn. The air was still burning thick with smoke, fuel, and the eerie silence that follows chaos. Flight 709 had vanished from radar just 19 minutes after takeoff. No mayday, no signal, nothing. The plane had shattered across a frozen valley in the middle of nowhere. Bodies were scattered, luggage torn open like confetti, black box crushed. And then, by the time they reached the site, nothing made sense. A sound, a faint, sharp cry, a baby's cry, the rescuers froze. Cameras recorded the moment. The sound echoed clearly coming from the wreckage. One firefighter dropped his gear and ran toward the noise, calling for backup. But when they found the source, everything changed. Because every single passenger on Flight 709 was confirmed dead. And there were no children listed on the manifest, no babies. Not one, so who or what was crying inside that plane? They called it one of the strangest crashes in recent aviation history. Not because of the way the plane fell, but because of what was found after it, or more accurately, what wasn't. Flight 709 was a red-eye flight. A small commercial plane carrying 58 people, business travelers, 2 honeymooners, 3 crew members. But then 2 other responders confirmed it. It was recorded clear as day. A baby crying from deep inside the collapsed fuselage. The sound came from the rear section, the part most damaged in the crash. And as they got closer, the crying grew louder. The mystery was only just beginning. It was just after 6 a.m. when the first responder, a 24-year-old firefighter named Daniel Reyes, reported something strange over his radio. That flare was the moment Flight 709 hit the ground. No survivor. Just torn seats, splinters of plastic, and an eerie warmth in the metal as if something had just been there. A baby. Maybe the manifest was wrong. Maybe a passenger had snuck on with a child, maybe a miracle. It took off from Anchorage, Alaska, headed south toward Seattle. The first 15 minutes were routine. The weather was cold, but stable. Communication was clear. Then suddenly radio silence, no distress call, no emergency code. Within hours, the footage of the crying sound leaked. Blogs, Reddit threads, paranormal forums. It spread like wildfire. The sound may have been a result of audio interference or post-crash atmospheric conditions. People began asking questions the authorities weren't ready to answer. A voice, faint, others suggested something darker, human trafficking. A cover-up, male, saying nothing, one resigned on the spot. Another asked to be reassigned, snowmobiles. He returned to the site days later off duty. He brought equipment, EMF sensors, audio recorders, night vision cameras. But what he found made things even stranger. Daniel recovered one audio file from his personal recorder, a scratchy, barely there sound. But under analysis it was clear, a baby crying, again, same pitch, same rhythm, choppers, emergency medics. A real crying child. It took 7 hours to reach the site. What they found was devastating, twisted metal, scorched earth, broken lives. The plane simply vanished from all radar systems. ATC thought it might be an equipment glitch. But 10 minutes later, satellites picked up a heat flare over a remote region near Lake Iliac. A search crew was dispatched immediately, and yet, "We're hearing something. Sounds like a baby crying." At first, the command station assumed it was shock or stress. The team broke protocol. They dropped everything and began tearing through the wreckage. They thought maybe someone had survived. But when they finally reached the source, there was nothing, no baby, no car seat, no crib. And then the crying stopped. The NTSB held a press conference. The spokesperson claimed, quote, "All remains have been identified. No infants or toddlers were on board, no evidence of human survival." But the rescuers weren't convinced. Especially Daniel Reyes. "I heard it with my own ears. It wasn't wind, it wasn't radio noise, it was a child." He became obsessed. And something else. At the 17-second mark, just behind the crying, you could hear it. "We told them not to bring her." That clip was never released to the public. But according to leaked transcripts from the investigation, the voice did not match any of the passengers or crew. Not even close. Rumors began to circulate that Flight 709 was carrying an unregistered passenger, a child hidden from the manifest. Some speculated she was part of a custody dispute. But the manifest was verified. The bodies matched the list. All 58 accounted for. No baby, no toddler, no girl. And yet the crying kept returning. Weeks later, when the debris was moved to a secure hangar for analysis, 3 engineers working late claimed to hear it. One technician whispered to her colleague, "I think she's still on the plane, just not alive." The media died down. The headlines shifted. But for the people who were there, who heard it, one question still lingers. If there were no children on that plane, if every passenger was accounted for, then who was crying? And more importantly, what if she's still crying? What happens when evidence doesn't fit the facts? When witnesses all say the same thing, but the data says otherwise? That was the case with Flight 709, the baby's cry. At first dismissed as shock, became the one detail no one could explain away. No survivor. No recording device on board that could mimic it. No physical sign of any child, yet multiple first responders confirmed hearing it. Some even swore they felt something while searching the wreckage. By the 3rd day of recovery, things began to unravel. At the secure hangar where debris was stored, workers complained of strange electrical interference. Tools malfunctioned. Alarms tripped without cause. One investigator, Susan Carr, described feeling watched whenever she entered the section containing the rear fuselage where the crying was first heard. She wasn't alone. A junior tech assigned to inventory broken seat frames quit after just 2 shifts. He left a note in his locker that read, "There's something still inside that plane, not a person, but it knows we're here." The note was never confirmed publicly, but off the record, multiple employees recalled seeing it. Some said the handwriting changed halfway through the message, as if someone else had taken over the pen. These weren't just ghost stories. These were professionals, engineers, aviation techs, forensic experts walking away from high-paying jobs in fear. The government claimed stress, trauma, coincidence. But what stunned Daniel wasn't the condition of her remains, it was the tissue analysis. But Daniel Reyes wasn't buying it. He'd been the first to hear the baby cry and the first to reach the spot where it came from. But something about that moment stuck with him, not just the sound, but the smell, the heat of the wreckage. It felt recent, alive. Daniel couldn't let it go. The crash site had been sealed. Nothing went in or out without documentation. There was no reason for baby DNA to be anywhere near that plane. He started to dig deeper. He got access to unreleased autopsy reports. They all aligned except for one, but intact enough to extract partial audio. The first 20 minutes were normal pilots chatting about turbulence, radio confirmations with ATC. Then static, a warning light. Rapid descent, panic, a 31-year-old flight attendant. Her body was found near the galley, arms crossed, a burned scarf wrapped around her torso. Under her body, a second DNA trace had been found. Not male, not adult, not distorted, not static, a real child's cry. And this time, everyone in the cockpit heard it. Infant. The trace was dismissed in the report as environmental contamination, possibly from an unrelated transfer at the morgue. But Daniel knew better, unless she really had been holding something or someone. 2 months after the crash, a second black box was recovered from a stream 2 miles from the site. Damaged, corroded, and then, at minute, 27 minutes and 41 seconds, the same cry, crystal clear. Experts tried to debunk it. They failed. No simulation could recreate the overlapping voices and environmental sounds in perfect sync. What the hell is that? In a podcast interview, he offered a disturbing theory. Do we have a baby on board? When the cry was isolated, reversed, and slowed down, it revealed layered harmonics. A metaphysical residue caught between timelines. Most people dismissed him as a fringe theorist. Negative, what is that? But buried deep in the waveform, a pattern emerged, a frequency sequence used in military emergency broadcasts from the 1960s of passengers who were never meant to board. Ghost seats, echoes, you fly enough dead routes, you start to see things? Hear things, what if that baby was never alive in the first place? Then came the last clear statement from the co-pilot. She's not in the cabin. She's in the walls. cut to static. The recording was never made public, but a leak on an aviation forum confirmed a partial transcript along with metadata showing the audio's authenticity. A psychic shockwave replaying itself. A kind of pre-death broadcast only certain people can hear, whatever they heard. It was real. A retired crash investigator named Malcolm Tate took a special interest in the case. There are legends in aviation. Stories you don't hear on the record. He called them airborne shadows, entities that cling to certain aircraft, repeating trauma. But one fact supported his idea, but the families never believed it. Flight 709 wasn't flying a new route. It was operating under a recycled flight number. The same number as a tragic crash in 1971, different airline, same flight code, same region. And on that plane, a mother and her infant daughter? Neither body was ever recovered. As more analysts reviewed the new black box audio, they found something even stranger, not natural, not human. Some compared it to binaural brainwave interference. Others said it resembled polyphonic chanting. No one could explain it. There was no reason a baby's cry should contain it, unless it wasn't a baby. At all. One psychologist, Dr. Lena Ford, proposed a theory involving emotional echo phenomena, the idea that strong trauma can imprint onto physical space. According to her, the passengers knew something was wrong. The baby's cry wasn't a call for help, it was a warning. She'd studied similar cases: haunted ships, abandoned mining shafts, derailed trains where inexplicable sounds were heard again and again. But this case, it was different. Because this wasn't a memory of pain. It was a presence, active, searching, and possibly still waiting to be found. 2 years later, no cause was ever confirmed for the crash of Flight 709. The official report cited instrument failure and spatial disorientation. And every now and then, online forums still report strange things. Air traffic controllers hearing crying on empty frequencies. Pilots who refused to fly routes near Lake Iliac. A hangar worker who said she saw a baby's footprint appear in frost, then fade. No one knows what really happened that night. But one thing is certain, whatever was on that plane didn't crash alone. For months, investigators tried to close the case. Flight 709 had been written off as a tragic accident and unexplained failure in altitude systems during a standard nighttime climb. The report was polished. The technical language was airtight. But behind the scenes, everyone knew the truth. They couldn't explain the cry. 3 months after the crash, an FAA archivist reviewing unrelated paperwork found something odd: flight log for Flight 709 with 59 names, not 58. They couldn't explain the DNA, and they definitely couldn't explain the second flight log. One extra line, handwritten, Seat 18B. Not because the DNA wasn't human, because it was too degraded to be matched to any database. Almost like it had come from another time. No blood, deleted from FAA servers. Replaced by the original version with only 58 names. After nearly a year of personal investigation, Daniel Reyes, the firefighter who first heard the cry, uploaded a 12-minute voice memo to a private YouTube channel. It was titled, "No burns, no impact trauma, just a single baby sock lying beneath it, initials, CL." But here's the thing, Seat 18B had been found completely intact, no sign of a body. The sock was sealed and sent to a private lab. The test came back inconclusive. When the archivist tried to follow up on the source of the log, it was already gone. When he asked his supervisor, the answer was short. "There's no Seat 18B, the passenger we didn't save." In the recording, he sounded calm but tired. He described recurring dreams, always the same. He's standing in the snow, the wreckage behind him, but she ended up in ours. The last major break in the story came not from an investigator, but from a grieving mother named Karen Ellis. Her son, Marcus, was one of the passengers aboard Flight 709. He had been seated in row 17, the row in front of the mysterious one, 8B. A baby is crying, but it's not afraid, it's humming. His radio was still on. She was in the boarding area, holding a baby. But several passengers did mention, vaguely, seeing a young woman with pale skin and a pink bundle. He said they weren't talking to anyone, just staring at the plane. I thought it was odd, but didn't ask more. He walks toward the sound, and just before he reaches it, he wakes up. He ends the message with this: "I think we weren't supposed to find her. I think she was never part of our world. And now that we heard her, she's listening too." 2 days later, Daniel disappeared. His car was found abandoned by the edge of Lake Iliac. His boots were on the shore, and from it, faint and distant, came a cry. In a TV interview, Karen said something most people ignored. But to the few who followed the case, it meant everything. "Marcus told me he saw a woman before the flight. Investigators found no video footage of the woman, no records, no luggage. No one ever came forward. And yet, when Karen visited the crash site a year later, she placed a small teddy bear where her son's seat would have been. A memorial. 3 weeks later, she received a package at her home. No return address. Inside was the teddy bear, clean, intact, wrapped in a baby blanket and taped to it. A note: "Thank you for remembering her. We still hear her." Today, Flight 709 is barely mentioned in official databases. The crash is labeled routine failure. The footage of the baby's cry has been buried under copyright strikes and takedowns. A janitor working in the storage facility where parts of the wreckage were locked away recently shared an anonymous voicemail. In it, you can hear the background hum of fluorescent lights. And something else. And yet the legacy refuses to die. Pilots flying over the Iliac corridor report hearing strange radio interference frequencies that don't exist. Cabin crews on similar routes avoid row 18, even if it doesn't technically exist on newer aircraft. One airline quietly renumbered all flights between Anchorage and Seattle to avoid 709 altogether. And aviation students in training now learn of a strange but undocumented warning: if you hear a baby crying and there's no baby on board, don't look back. Just keep flying. Some believe the child was a ghost. Others think she was never human at all. But a small group of researchers, including Malcolm Tate and Dr. Lena Ford, began a final collaboration. They suggested something even more disturbing. What if she wasn't lost? What if she was found by something else? A passenger in transit between realities? A being left behind by accident or on purpose? And Flight 709 wasn't her destination, it was her doorway. A vessel for something we're not meant to understand. That unmistakable sound, faint, insistent, inhuman, a baby crying, but now it's not coming from the wreckage. It's coming from the walls, from the vents, from the places no one dares to go. And maybe, just maybe, she's still looking for someone to hold her, someone to take her home.